Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My wife's obsession with cleanliness is driving me crazy. After that, am I the jerk for wanting my son to move back closer to his family? And after that, my aunt stole my inheritance, then her whole life fell apart. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen has to wipe down the toilets. The only thing I'll be wiping is that smirk off your face, fetid boy. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My wife's obsession with cleanliness is driving me crazy. I had a major fight with my wife a few hours ago, and I strongly think I'm in the right, but she's so angry I almost feel like I'm the crazy one. I'll provide context. I married my wife 3 years ago, but we've been together for 6. One important thing is to note that she's extremely clean. I regret not moving in together until we got married because while I knew she was clean, I didn't know to the full extent. Let this be a lesson to live with your partner before marriage. She's the reason why our house looks like a model home. She hates dishes in the sink, while I'm content to let them sit there for a couple days. She spends her days off scrubbing bathrooms because in her mind, they should be cleaned weekly. She doesn't let me bring my shoes inside and insists that I shower immediately when I get home before laying in bed. There are a million more things, but hopefully you have an idea. This didn't start hurting our marriage until we had kids. We have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I left work when our youngest was born, and that's when our disagreement on how clean the home needs to be started to get bad. She expects me to do most of the chores now when it used to be primarily her, and I wouldn't mind if they were reasonable. She wants the kids to have a bath every single day, and I think every 1 to 3 days is fine. She wants all of their toys put away by the end of the day, and I think there's no point when it will be a mess again. She wants the dishes done daily. She wants all house bedding washed weekly. She wants me to vacuum weekly. She wants me to mop every 3 to 4 days, since in her logic, the kids spend a lot of time playing on the floor. They won't get hurt or be sick if I mop every 2 weeks. Because I don't play along with most of her demands, she ends up being the one to do most of the housework when she gets home or on her rare off days. She works 40 to 80 hours a week, so it is a lot, but she does it to herself. I feel I do what's reasonable. This all built up to today. She got home and saw that I hadn't yet washed the dishes and there was still grease and food in some of the pans and on the countertop. Also, I hadn't yet brought in the trash cans from the previous 2 days when they were emptied. She flew off the handle, calling me lazy and a slob. She said she would like for me to return to work since in her eyes I'm doing a poor job, and use the money to hire a weekly housekeeper and a nanny who wouldn't leave the kids in PJs all day. I got upset, and I told her she's crazy, and she works herself up over small things, and I will not be leaving my kids with a stranger. She packed a bag for herself and our babies and went to her mom's house. I'm furious. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your standards are too low. I am someone who genuinely has always struggled with keeping my environment clean. But dishes should be done every day. The house should be vacuumed like every other day, not even weekly. Mopping every few days is normal. Washing yourself before getting in bed is my preference as well. Washing sheets weekly is standard. Picking up all the toys and putting them completely away at night is incredibly good for your mental health. Kids are definitely washed every day. Soap is every other day. The PJ thing though, there's definitely 1 day a week on the weekends where we're all in PJs all day. Are you doing this every day? Based on your standards, I'm actually wondering if maybe you're depressed or have ADHD. I have ADHD, and I know that doing the bare minimum isn't easy. Maybe talk to someone and see if you can work through this. You're the jerk. Every single thing you listed as her cleanliness standards are very reasonable in my book. They are the same standards I have in my home. If I had kids, they would likely be stricter, since kids touch everything, put stuff in their mouths, and roll around on the floor. In my book, I would consider you a slob. Right now, your wife is coming home to a place where she doesn't feel comfortable living in. Regardless of how you feel about cleanliness, she isn't comfortable in her own home. That, in my opinion, supersedes your disagreement about cleanliness standards. Think of how you would feel in her place. From what I'm reading here, you're a stay-at-home dad, and you're not keeping up your end of the bargain. If you don't think you should clean that often, then she's right. You should go back to work and hire someone to help clean your house. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
If you're a neat freak like I am,
Never get into a relationship with a slob. You'll end up resenting them more than you can imagine. Am I the jerk for wanting my son to move back closer to his family? I'm 56, female, and I live with my husband, who's 64. We only have one son, who's 33, who currently lives abroad, and we only see him once a year, as it's very far away and expensive to go. We live in a small town. He moved away when he was 18 for college and never came back. We expected him to move back after he graduated, but he decided to stay where he was, since he already had a job and a girlfriend there. They got married. Our town is close to our state's capital, where his work field is very strong. Ever since his senior year in college, I've been trying to convince him to move closer for a better career and to stay closer to his family. He never showed any interest, which I found odd, especially since his wife also works in the same field. 4 years ago, they moved abroad. I felt betrayed when he told me. He was already living 3 hours away from us. Why would he choose to go even further to another country, but not the city right next to us? I never said anything about it, other than to let him know that his father and I are always here if they need us. Until recently, things were fine. I miss him a lot. We text every day, but we don't get to speak to each other often. The problem is, my father, who's 84, whose health took a dive and is very fragile. And with my son living so far, he's missing a precious time he could be spending right here. His grandfather is not likely to live many years now. I told the news to my son and he was sad about it, and he came to see us and left a week ago. I was honest with him. I said his grandfather won't be around much longer, and since he lives so far away, he'll lose the opportunity to stay close and enjoy the time he has left. He was not happy about me touching this matter. He said I was trying to guilt him into moving back. I asked him why he was doing this to me. Why doesn't he miss me and his dad? We're getting old, and he's only seeing us once or twice a year. It's cruel to us. He said he missed us, but he's happy where he is and does not plan on moving back, and he and his wife are already making plans on buying a house where they live. I couldn't take it anymore, and I burst out crying. I told him I felt abandoned, that he didn't seem to care for us, and that he should enjoy his family while he can, because we won't be around forever. I asked what makes him think he can't be happy living here, and he didn't respond. The few days after this were very awkward, and after he left, he seems to be even more distant, avoiding me and being very short with his texts. Yesterday, his wife called and said my son was feeling bad and had told her what had happened. She called me a jerk and said I had no right trying to manipulate him like that, and I should be ashamed of myself. I don't think I'm the jerk for wanting my son closer to me. They're the jerks for abandoning family. And I'm including her as well, since she did the same. I talk to her mother often, and she's on my side. Edit. I didn't realize we could edit the original post. I just want to add some information. 1. I'm not asking my son to sell his happiness just to be by my side. I just can't see why he needed to be so far away, while he and his wife could have a wonderful career around our area. They could earn more money while staying close to the family. It's illogical for me to think about anything different. 2. Some are under the impression I gave up my life to become his mother, and that's not true. I had my own career and a good one. I worked hard to give my son the best I could. I retired 6 years ago. 3. I realize this is a very strong cultural background where we come from. Family is expected to stay close. My son was the first member of the family that decided to move far away. 4. I don't expect to be taken care of when I get old. Me and my husband already talked about this, and unless my son wants to, we will not ask him to take care of us. 5. Just to clarify, I am not Indian. While I love India, and I've been there once with my husband, I just want to clarify I'm South American. My son currently lives in North America. Edit 2. I think I'm getting it. It's really cultural. Most people here seem to be from the US, and I understand it's really normal for families to be separated once your kids move to college, and that they see each other just once a year at Christmas or Thanksgiving, for example. I was raised to believe family should stick together. I raised my son to have the same values, and I expected him to keep this tradition, but he's broken it. It's not his fault, but I will never be able to understand this decision. You're the jerk. Not for feeling sad that your son lives far away, but for constantly trying to guilt him into moving back when he's made it clear that that's not going to happen. Adults get to choose for themselves where they want to live and what career they want. Your son is not required to move close to you. Oh my goodness. He left home 15 years ago. He has a marriage, a life, and a career in another country. He will never come back, and expecting him to move for any reason at all is just absurd. It's not cruel for a 33-year-old to have his own life. You're the jerk, sadly. You're the jerk. As a daughter who immigrated to another country, I can tell you that if my parents said this to me, I would never want to see them ever again. Lucky for me, I have nice supportive parents who miss me, and I miss them, but always understood that my life is mine to live. You're the jerk. And honestly, given how pushy you seem to be, have you considered that maybe he doesn't want to move back because he doesn't want you in his business all the time? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her son? Please let us know. My aunt stole my inheritance, then her whole life fell apart. My aunt was one of 2 kids my grandparents had. My mother was the polar opposite to my aunt. She worked from the age of 12 in my grandfather's shop, never asked for anything, and eventually managed to start her own business. My aunt never held down a job until the age of 26, was constantly stealing from her parents, and was constantly in trouble. Despite this, my aunt was spoiled by my grandmother, and so were her kids. She had 3 kids from 3 different men, and her first husband was not one of them, if you know what I mean. Didn't matter what my aunt or her kids did, my grandmother would always jump to their defense. She never had time for my mom and her kids, unless it was to get something from us. The only reason my mom would visit her was because she loved my grandfather. My grandfather passed in 2004, and a few months after, my nan decided to write up a new will. My mother and my aunt were both present for it when she signed it, so they knew what was in it. It made it so that when she passed, her home would be sold and the money split 25% each to my mom and aunt, and the remaining 50% would go evenly to the grandkids. At the time, the home was worth more than £500,000, so it would be a nice little inheritance, but nothing life-changing. In 2010, my mom passed after an accident and did not have a current will in place. As she no longer had her business and was renting a house, she didn't have anything of much monetary value. The only thing she was concerned about was what would be done at her funeral should she have passed away, but had told me everything she wanted: the music, the flowers, the coffin color, and even what people were to wear at the funeral. She wanted people to wear bright, warm colors. So when she passed, my aunt and nan took over all of the arrangements and tried to undo all of the things I had told them. The songs were going to be songs I knew Mom didn't like. The flowers were all the wrong colors, and they picked a hideous coffin. With the help of my siblings, we were able to change a few of the things back to the way they were supposed to be, but the coffin couldn't be changed for some reason, and my nan refused to let people come dressed as clowns, so it was all black. It was frustrating. After the funeral, my nan had her will changed. My siblings and I were told by our aunt that she didn't have any involvement with the writing of the will, and our nan told us that she changed it so that Mom's share would go to her kids instead. All good, we thought. After Mom passed, my nan just stopped talking about my mom. At first, we thought it was because she was still recovering from losing her daughter, but even 5 years after Mom passed, she still wouldn't talk about her. Even if you brought up a story about Mom, Nan would very obviously try and change the subject, usually about how hard my aunt and her kids had it. And if you went to talk to her about your own problems, she would somehow bring it back to my aunt. I had suffered a mental breakdown after my mom's passing, so you can imagine how much it hurt to hear, "Well, they have it so much worse." In 2016, my nan passed. She had written down what she wanted to be done for her funeral, and it was basically all the same things she had picked out about my mom's funeral, even the music to be played. I don't know why she tried to have a dress rehearsal funeral using my mom as a stand-in, but it was obvious that that's what she was trying to do. So after a couple of months, our siblings and I were waiting to hear about the will reading, and my aunt kept telling me, "Oh, it'll be another month before we can do the reading." I didn't mind. I wasn't fussy about the money, to be honest, but my oldest brother was hoping to use the money to pay for a honeymoon for him and his then fiancée, and my younger brother was about to start uni, so it would be a huge help. Eventually, my dad bumped into the solicitor my grandmother had used to deal with her will and asked what was happening. The solicitor let slip that the will had already been read and that it left everything to my aunt. When my dad questioned this, the solicitor told him that my aunt had been present when the will was written, despite promising that she had nothing to do with it. When confronted, my aunt initially tried to deny, but eventually admitted to lying to all of us. She showed us the will, and it confirmed what we already knew. The house and all its contents were now my aunt's. This included my granddad's war medals. He fought in the Second World War. When I told her that he had promised them to me before she had passed, she said, "Well, unless you have it in writing, you will have nothing in this house. Anyway, I already gave them to Clive." My heart sank. Clive? not his real name obviously, was her eldest son and the dictionary definition of a screw-up. He had been in and out of prison for stealing and dealing. I knew that the moment that jerk got his hands on my granddad's medals, they would be sold off. We looked into taking her to court over the will, but everyone we spoke to said that we probably wouldn't get anything out of it. She immediately put the house up for sale at close to £750,000. She had upset too many people in our town, so she was going to sell the house and move closer to her daughter, who lives in a big city. An offer was made on the house, and she put down a deposit on her house near the big city, and I thought that was that. Here's where karma comes into play. The people who wanted my nan's house had a survey done on the house to see if there were issues, and oh boy, were there. Turns out that the land the house was built on was way too soft for the type of house it was, and it was sinking. It has sunk about 2 centimeters in the 40-plus years my nan and granddad had lived there, but the sinking was accelerating to 1 centimeter per year. This meant that within the next 3 years, the house would need some serious work or be knocked down. The new value of the house? £60,000. The buyers immediately pulled out of the deal, having not even put down a deposit. She couldn't buy her new house, but still had to pay the deposit on it. And while this was happening, she let Clive move in with her into her house that she rented from the council. He wasn't allowed to live in any of the council houses because he had trashed every single one he had ever been given. Someone reported this, and she was kicked out of her home. She was forced to move into my nan's old home as she couldn't live anywhere else. So there she is, living in a crumbling house with her jerk son and her partner. She was stuck there for 2 years. Every time I saw her, she would try and start talking to me, and I would just ignore her and walk off. One time, as I was walking away, she screamed, "Your mother deserved what she got for having a little jerk like you." In the middle of a busy street, someone reported her to the police, and she had an official warning from them and was ridiculed on Facebook. Every time I saw her after that, she looked more and more miserable. Eventually, she sold the house for something like £85,000 and moved in with her daughter in the big city. I lost contact with her and her kids after this. I thought karma had been issued. Oh, but karma still wasn't done with her yet. I bumped into one of her former friends, and she told me what happened after she left our town. She moved into her daughter's home, let's call her Sue, but they only had a 3-bedroom house and 3 kids. My aunt and her partner had to live in the smallest room of the house while my aunt looked for a job and a home to rent. Even with £85,000, she couldn't afford a home anywhere. After about a month, my aunt's partner ran off after emptying her account. She was left stranded in Sue's house, not contributing anything because all the money she makes goes into bingo. Eventually, Sue and my aunt get into a screaming match, and my aunt said something along the lines of, "I never should have had you." Sue immediately kicked her out of the house. So there's my aunt, in a city where she knows nobody, no money, no home, and the last bridge she had a smoldering wreck. Last anyone has heard, she was living in a caravan in the roughest part of the city, and she can no longer work because she's suffering early onset arthritis and can no longer move her hands. I know I shouldn't get joy out of something like this happening to another person, but it does bring me some peace as to what happened. My son is a thief who stole from his girlfriend and myself. For context, my son, Elijah, is 23 and lives at home partially due to a physical disability. He's currently taking classes online to earn a business degree. He has been with his current and first-time girlfriend, Tanya, who's 24, for 2 years. Tanya is also in college, goes to a local brick and mortar. As I understand, a few months ago, Tanya gave my son a brand new Xbox Series X, which was a bit odd to me. It's important to note, as Tanya's birthday approached, I gave Eli $200 to put towards a decent gift for her since she had randomly gave him something expensive. Fast forward a few weeks, Tanya abruptly stopped coming over. They are adults, so neither my wife or myself pressed him as to why. Eventually, Tanya calls my wife to explain that Eli is refusing to return her Xbox. She was a bit confused. Tanya said they didn't break up, but had a fight before she asked for the Xbox back. She also claimed it was never a gift. We spoke to Eli. He assured us it was absolutely a gift, as it was even wrapped. I felt they needed to figure things out on their own. Last weekend, Tanya came over and approached me in our garage. My son and wife weren't home at the time. She had explained everything, then handed me her phone to read their text history. To summarize, one of Tanya's 3 roommates stole from her. 2 days later, the Xbox she had purchased was delivered. Fearing it would get stolen, she asked my son to hold on to it for safekeeping until she found a new place to live. As a direct quote, I haven't even opened it yet. It just sucks that I'm living with a thief. When I come over, let's set it up at least so that you can use it." He acknowledged everything she had said. Aside from the entire Xbox ordeal, the more I read, the more livid I become. The things my son said to her, speaking to her in the way that he was, I was mortified. This is not the son I raised. I took her into his room and packed up the Xbox. I was in shock to learn about this side of my son that I never even knew existed. I was asking questions and learned the fight started after he forgot her birthday. Days later, she was very hurt and confronted him. In return, he tossed her a wrinkled-up shirt that had a $10 price tag on it. She did so much for his birthday, helped his mom decorate and throw him a party. They arrived home a few hours after she left. He just stepped over the threshold and I went off on him. It's not like I can discipline him anymore, but I darn sure wanted him to feel shame and guilt for his appalling behavior. He kept saying that I didn't understand. She's only telling her side. When I informed him the Xbox was gone, he completely threw a 5-year-old tantrum. He called me names and said that I had no business getting involved in his personal relationship. His mother agreed with him and asked what happened to them figuring things out on their own. Legally, she could have just gotten the law involved. 3 days later, he put a keyed lock on his door. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It would be different if he lived in his own apartment, but he's under your roof. You have 100% the right to not want to have some stolen Xbox in your house. You gave it back to the legal owner. You did nothing wrong. Not the jerk. If he took your $200 and bought her a $10 t-shirt, then he's clearly capable of making up a story about it being a birthday gift. She didn't just tell her side, she showed you the texts. Not the jerk. You did the right thing. Your son attempted to steal from his girlfriend while living under your roof. He is in no place to call you names or throw a tantrum. She was rightfully upset. Your son is in the wrong. Your wife is enabling his behavior, which is something you two should communicate with each other about. ETA. If they are adults who can figure it out on their own, then they should act like it. Your son is acting like a kid. Perhaps he should be treated like one in this scenario. If he can't act like an adult at the age of 23, it may be necessary for you to get involved so he can take some accountability for his actions before it turns into a lawsuit. Am I the jerk for bringing my baby to the hotel resort my brother was getting married in? My brother was getting married, and it was a child-free wedding per future sister-in-law's request. The wedding was out of state, so my husband and I were going to make it into a 3-day weekend. We had a sitter lined up months ago. The day before we were set to leave, she had to cancel for a family emergency. We tried to find a last-minute sitter that we trusted and could also do just overnight, but came up empty. I tried calling and texting my brother about the situation, but I couldn't get a hold of him. We were both in the wedding party, and I didn't want to leave my brother and his soon-to-be wife in a bind. So I called my mother after that, since I knew she was with them. I explained the situation, and she said she'd call me back after talking to him. 4 hours passed, and we didn't hear back. We had to make a decision, and since we're currently sharing one vehicle, couldn't really leave my husband and kid without a vehicle, and had put a lot of money already into the wedding and trip. We just took our baby with us. We got there later than we originally planned and just went to our room. The next afternoon was the wedding, and my husband and I planned to swap time out. I'd go to the ceremony and part of the reception while he stayed with the baby, and he could attend the second half of the reception while I stayed with the baby. When the ceremony was over and we were heading inside to the reception, my husband had the baby inside of her stroller. I joined my husband and went to say hello to some family members and went with him to congratulate my brother and new sister-in-law. Husband said his hellos and congrats, then went back to our room with our kid. I left the reception area a few times to bring my husband some small plates of food so he didn't have to wait for his turn to eat. On one of my trips back, my brother spoke with me about it being a child-free wedding, and his wife was upset that my husband had the baby in the lobby and that I kept leaving the reception. I told him they can't be too upset because we didn't bring the baby into the wedding area or the reception. The rest of the time I was at the reception, I kept getting comments from who I'm guessing were sister-in-law's family and her bridesmaids about how I was trying to steal her thunder by having my baby there. Sister-in-law kept asking why I didn't just leave them at home and would not accept my reason for not doing so. It's been a sore spot for my family and her all weekend. Am I the jerk for bringing the baby with us? Info. The wedding ceremony itself was outside in a courtyard. It was not in a closed-off area. We had to go through the lobby area to get to the reception hall. My husband was in the lobby walking with the baby and getting coffee from the hotel shop. Not the jerk. Excited to hear what magical solutions everyone had to offer. You were in the wedding party. You had a solid plan for everything. You showed up and did an amazing job under those circumstances. Not the jerk. You and your husband did all you could to respect the child-free wedding while also dealing with an unexpected sitter cancellation. You tried to reach out to someone in advance of the wedding and did everything you could to not have the baby be the center of attention. The only piece that maybe stands out is the left the reception area a few times, but without knowing what kind of setup there was or how you left, it doesn't change my opinion. Everyone sucks here. I think where you messed up was having your husband and baby greeting guests as they headed to the reception. That comes across as attention-seeking, and I do think it violates the child-free feeling. Yes, other unrelated kids may have been in the hotel, but they weren't going around greeting people, especially to go greet the bride at her child-free wedding. Overall, I think you mostly did the best you could, but I would not have taken the baby around. You're the jerk for bringing the baby down to the lobby so guests interacted with her on the way to the reception. It would have been fine if you had maybe waited until the whole wedding was over, but no, you brought the baby down during the middle. That was rude. I assume your husband knew the timing of the reception, so why was he down there at that time? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Sister-in-law demands I sell her a Barbie baseball cap. I have a baseball cap from my childhood that has a Barbie logo on it. It's black with the name Barbie in pink with a fancy font. My son loves it. He's only 3 and doesn't know what it says. He only likes it because we were looking through the basement in my parents' house and came across the hat and a photo of me wearing it when I was younger. He got super excited when he saw the picture and has been in love with the hat ever since. He calls it the mama hat. Everyone thinks it's cute. We were having dinner with my sister-in-law and her family. My sister-in-law has an 8-year-old daughter who I love. She really likes Barbie and everything she owns is Barbie themed. I had a feeling that maybe it wouldn't be best for my son to wear the Barbie hat while we were there, but he really wanted to show his uncle, aka his best buddy, and my husband said it shouldn't be a big deal, so I allowed it. The night went pretty well, but I noticed my sister-in-law was a little quiet. Right before we left, she pulled me aside and asked if I could do her a big favor. She asked if I could sell her the Barbie hat. I asked her why she wanted the hat, and she said that her daughter's been eyeing it all night and asked for one. I told her to just buy one online or something, but she said that she feels like that would be a waste. I said I was sorry, but I wasn't giving her the hat. She argued that my son is a boy, and once he realizes it's Barbie themed, he'll throw it away. I explained to her that she can ask for it again when the time comes and I'll think about it. I thought that was it, but she went to my son directly and started telling him how Barbie is for girls and that the hat is Barbie. He got upset because to him it's not a Barbie hat, it's a mama hat. I was over it though, and I told her that she definitely wasn't getting it ever now, that if he decides he doesn't want it anymore, it's going straight to the garbage or my mom's basement again. She got all frustrated and said I'm being absolutely ridiculous. She accused me of being a childish jerk and said that I just broke her daughter's heart. Am I the jerk? I'm starting to feel a little bad. I think I might be doing a little too much over a silly old hat. Trying to make a 3-year-old ashamed of his favorite hat is really crummy behavior for an adult. Don't reward it. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not splitting my daughter's college fund? I'm 42, female, and my daughter is 17. When she was 7, we lost her father to an avoidable accident. Due to that and the subsequent settlement, my daughter was able to have a trust fund of sorts that provided for college, grad school if she wanted, and even some left over for whatever life might bring. It is money that, managed wisely, would enable her to have a head start in life. She knows about this and is never taken for granted given where the money came from. After all, we'd both rather have her father around than the money. That said, life moves on, and I remarried 6 years after my former husband's passing to a lovely man who has 2 kids of his own, who are 17 and 13. All of the kids live with us primarily, with his kids seeing their mother on vacations as she lives across the country. This year, both our girls are graduating and should be heading to college. My daughter was admitted ED to her dream school last year and is ecstatic about it. Her father is an alumnus, and she has this old sweatshirt of his that she kept to remind her of him. She cried so much when she got in, and both her stepfather and I were proud of her because she worked hard to get in. My stepdaughter will also be attending a wonderful school that is one of the top-ranked schools for her interests. The problem now arises with the money to pay for stepdaughter's school. Because her parents cannot afford to pay the tuition in its entirety, stepdaughter will have to take some loans. All told, she will graduate with about $40,000 in loans, which I think is still quite modest for the school she's attending and her earning prospects post-graduation. But my daughter will graduate debt-free, and for my husband, this is suddenly a problem. He wants us to split up my daughter's fund between all 3 kids because then they could all, probably, have college fully paid for. My daughter won't have much left over and will definitely need to borrow for grad school, which she has expressed interest in attending. But, according to my husband, that's okay because everyone will start off on equal footing post-college. I think this is unfair to my daughter because 1, her father had to pass for this money, and 2, this is like her inheritance from him. My husband thinks that they are all siblings and should be happy to share the money with them if it means giving her siblings a head start in life. I absolutely do not want to put her in the position of being guilted into saying yes if she doesn't want to. I have expressed all of this to my husband, and he thinks that I'm being selfish, that I'm teaching my daughter to be selfish, and I obviously don't consider my stepkids the same as my daughter. Am I the jerk for wanting to protect my daughter's trust for her as it was intended? ETA. Since I've seen this a few times already, both kids do have college funds, but somewhat smaller because my husband and his ex got their finances together later in life. So there is some money, but with the caliber of the school that stepdaughter will be attending, she will still need some loans to cover costs. I haven't brought up going to a cheaper school because that will be a fresh set of problems given where my daughter will be going. Not the jerk. That settlement was for your deceased husband's kids, not your future kids, and certainly not someone else's. I agree. Not the jerk. The money is for your deceased husband's kids, not your current husband's kids. Keep your stance. This is your daughter's money from her father. The other kids have money from their father. To me, your current husband is the jerk for even suggesting it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. When will the new step-parents stop trying to steal the kids' college funds? The world may never know. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.